Okay. I've been told that we have a truck coming. Is there any of you who are going to have to leave when the truck comes in?
All of us.
Well, if you do that, if you do have to leave, please come back as quickly as you can and we'll get started again, okay? All right. So, what, frustration management, is that what we're doing?
Well, whatever, whatever category you can call it, almost anything you want.
Okay, here we go.
Alright, so we'll try to run with something. I often coming here, I've been here a few times over the years, and I really like being here. This is like one of my favorite places to be this role. It's a different role for me because I'm used to presenting. I present in professional communities quite a bit. Of course, this is a completely different, and I think a more fun place, because we get to have more open discussions. But, I always struggle a little bit preparing to come here because, what I like to read a fair bit. I really like the subjects of psychology and like the academic process, of how, how we as humans just work, right? What does it mean to be a human being? Do you ever think of that? Do you know that being was put on the words of human because we're the only ones capable of doing it? No other animal knows what just happened or can think about what's going to happen next. But every animal can react, right? And so we're like a weird mix of both, right? We can react without thinking, but we also have the ability to think, which makes us incredibly unique, but it's incredibly difficult. I read a book recently called The Power of Now, and I really liked it. And it caught me off guard because I still struggle, right? I still make bad decisions on a regular basis. I still don't, react with emotion instead of thought, right? And I think, that book says something that I found so valuable, it's almost scary. I wish someone would have said it to me long ago. What's the difference between a good decision and a bad decision?
The outcome?
Yeah, well, that's true. But it's often just a second of time. Just a second. We have emotions hit, snap, something happens, and that emotion strikes, and you feel it. And the thinking brain doesn't work that fast. So you need just a second, right? You need to find, we all do, we all just need to find a second of time, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Emmanuel.
Yes, sir.
I think, what you were describing, at least in Star Trek, they call them sentient beings. Sentient beings. Sentience. Aware.
Right, aware. Right. Well, and then there's there's parts to the process. I want to tell you guys about a story. It's a study that happened in the first time in the 60s, in the 1960s. They took small children. I believe they were about 8 years old. And they put them in a room, and they put a marshmallow on the desk, and they start a conversation with the kids, and then the person acts like they're interrupted. And they leave the kid in the room by themselves. And they say, "I'm sorry I have to leave, but I'll be back in a minute, and if you don't eat that marshmallow, I'll give you 2 marshmallows when I get back." And it turns out most of the kids just eat the marshmallow. Almost instantly. The guy walks out the door, marshmallow gone. And some of the kids don't eat the marshmallow. But here's where the story gets tricky. They follow those kids for many years. And it turns out the kids that didn't eat the marshmallow were much more successful in all aspects of life than the kids that ate the marshmallow. Simple study, right? Well, but it turns out it's not a simple study. Why do you think? What was the factor? What determined whether the kids were successful in life or not? What was the quality? What was the attribute they had? Any ideas?
Rational thinking.
What's that?
Rational thinking. What's going to happen?
I believe that there's a big part in there. There's rational thinking in there.
They follow directions.
Sure, obedience.
Way of thinking.
Yeah, well, and certainly there's a way of thinking. The original researchers, yes.
I think maybe the kids who didn't eat the marshmallow had a clicking in the brain to say, hey, I'm looking at a long-term goal here as opposed to, short-term satisfaction.
That is exactly what the original doers of the study, that's exactly what they said. They said, these kids that didn't eat the marshmallow were more disciplined. They had a bigger view of the future. They were more aware, right? And that road, for a long time, people believed that. They redid the study years later, I believe in the 80s, late 80s. They redid the study. And this time they videotaped the kids. That seems like something they probably should have done the first time, but whatever. They did it the second time. They videotaped the kids. And this time they found out something different. The kids, every single kid that looked at that marshmallow ate that marshmallow. It wasn't discipline. Not a single kid sat there and looked at that marshmallow and was like, life is bigger than this. I'm a strong person. I'm gonna, you know what I'm saying? That didn't happen. If they stood there and they looked at the marshmallow, they ate the marshmallow. Want to know what the kids did that didn't eat the marshmallow? They rearranged the chairs in the room. So one kid walked around the table backwards and counted how many times he could walk around the table backwards while the guy was gone. One kid tied and untied his shoes over and over and over again. They followed those kids for 10 years. Guess what? The ones that didn't eat the marshmallow were successful. And so, to me, I think there's I've known about this study for more than 10 years now. I think there's something so precious in there, right? Like, to not do what you're some things that you're not supposed to do, right? You're not supposed to eat the marshmallow. You're not supposed to do. But if you think about it, you're probably going to end up doing that, right? But if you just turn your head away from the marshmallow and say, what's out there in the world, and you keep looking for what is better, a good distraction, then you don't eat the marshmallow. And then, and then I read this Power of Now book, and I think there's another piece to that. The kids that didn't eat the marshmallow made a conscious decision. They made a conscious decision not to eat the marshmallow. And then they made a plan. And then they executed the plan. Right? The kids that ate the marshmallow, saw the marshmallow, had an emotional reaction, desire. Desire is an emotional reaction, right? And they fell for desire and they dove right in. Does it kind of make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't know, that little combination of stories really hits me because, I think of the bad decisions I've made in life and how long did it take me to make those decisions. Almost all of them were instant. They were really fast decisions that didn't go well, right? Something happened that made me upset, or didn't make me upset. I got upset over something that happened. You gotta be careful with your words, right? We've all been through this one. And then there is another type of mistake we make where we didn't think about it. We didn't think about it right. We let too much get involved and still made a bad decision. But I just get stuck in my head that you don't even get a chance. You don't even get a chance to do it right if you don't find that moment of silence between when something happens and a decision is made. Your emotional brain is much, much faster than that. They do use these examples like a snake. A snake knows to strike. A snake knows to run. But a snake doesn't know how to think. So we all have that ability that the snake has. And we have the ability to think. But the snake part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain, the part of the animalistic part of our brain that just knows how to respond to an event is much, 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 much faster than your thinking brain. And that's scientifically proven. It takes about 2 seconds to make a complete thought. Wild, right? That's the most simple thought. The most simple thing you can think. It takes you 2 seconds to develop that thought. You can react in a fraction of a second. Right? So, and I think then the next logical question is, how do I do that? Right? I don't know about you guys. Like, I love these topics, but they're hard to talk about because I'm not going to say I'm great at it. But I do practice almost daily, trying to find that silence. It's a version of meditation, right? But just finding that silence. And here's an exercise. It was actually from that same book, The Power of Now. People say, what does the silence feel like? Well, try this for me. Think about what you're going to think about next. What are you going to think about right after, right now? It's a little trick. It stops your brain, doesn't it? It stopped. There was no words. There's silence.
I already knew.
There's
My
silence.
name's John Mack. I already knew what I was thinking the next stop was going to be and where I was going.
Yeah.
I didn't hesitate. I already knew what I wanted to do and what I can't accomplish at this point in time.
Well, and so the trick isn't going to work for everyone. But the point is to find that silence. Like one of yes, sir.
Didn't you just say, think about what we was going to think about, what we was going to do next, right at this moment, or?
Yeah, just think about what you're going to think about next. Not what you're going to do. What's going to be your next thought?
My next thought. It stopped for a minute, but my next thought was, what was you going to say next?
That's what he said for a second.
Yeah,
But for a second, it stopped.
I stopped, and then I said, I wonder what you going to say next. That was my thought.
Eh,
But it stopped for a minute. I said, hold on, here. What are you going to say next?
Yeah, right. It's like I saw this presenter say, what's the difference between the person who talks to themselves and everyone else?
Their thoughts are outspoken and ours are silent.
Right, there's no difference. We're all just as crazy as the person that walks around talking to themselves all the time. We're all doing it. We're all doing it, right? And then like the idea of the outside observer. Have you guys heard this? Sit to observe yourself as if you're not yourself. This is a fun exercise.
To do what?
To observe yourself. So, all right, you have a conversation in your head. We all do.
Yeah. Okay,
There's
I
a
got you,
conversation in your head.
I got you now. I got you.
Now stop and listen to that conversation as if you're listening to yourself speak.
Oh.
You know what you're going to find? That unspoken conversation is phenomenally immature. The things that are going through your head are not actually things you would say to other people.
It's crazy.
In fact, the things that you're in your head, if you said them to other people, you might even be embarrassed. Right? Like it's...
Or maybe you hit the jaw. Might get punched.
Yeah, you might, right? That's right. Right? And you know what? I mean, it's never going to go away. But I do think it's worthwhile to find a break. To find a break in there. Right? And I think, with practice, it really does come true. Like the sounds, the depth of sound in any place is deeper when there's no conversation in your head. Your brain isn't capable of doing it all at once. Right? So if you want clear thought, you can't be having a conversation in your head while you're trying to think clearly. And so and it takes a lot of work. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I read all these things and like I work on it all the time, and certainly it's about the most frustrating endeavor I think I've ever gone through. I've been doing this now for about 4 months, just trying to like pick moments and make the sounds. And I have to say, I found it incredible. I used to think my memory was really bad. It is in some regards. I'm bad with names. I was misplacing things a lot, you know? It's like, is your memory bad? Or did you just like throw the keys over there because you just weren't even thinking about it? And how would you remember if you weren't thinking about it that your keys are over there? Right? Where if I'm feeling centered, I wouldn't throw my keys over there. Those are valuable things to me. I would say this is a valuable item. I'm going to put it where it belongs, right?
Right.
And so finding that moment of silence. Here's another thing. Yeah, sir.
My name is Don Automatic. Okay, some things, you know, that you do by habit, like you continuously do them over and over, and so you really don't think about it when you do it. You know, for instance, you know, and you always put your keys on the table as soon as you walk in the house. You do that without thinking about it. The only problem you might have is that if you don't take your keys out your pocket or something, then you'll think, well, you know, where's my keys? I always put them here.
Right. So
Yeah, reflex.
So what you're actually talking about is there's a big category of it in psychology. It's called dissociation. And dissociation often gets used as a really negative thing, but it's actually not. You can't think about everything you do, right? But if you're a thoughtful person, you would have done what you did, and you would have made a habit out of putting your keys where they belong. And once you have that habit, you can consciously say, I don't need to think about that anymore, right? Versus being like me, where I'm like leaving my house 5, 6, 7 times a week and can't find my keys. Like, I need to stop, right? Something isn't working. And there's like, you know, I taught high school and middle school for a long time, right? And I'll tell you what,
I'm sorry.
the real fun's in the parents, right? The kids are fun. Don't get me wrong, but you know, especially like the 8th grade, you get them a little younger, and they just got so much spirit in them. You can't break them, so you don't have to be so gentle, and they're not quite done with you yet. You know, and when you get later in high school, they're just done with you. Your job loses that part of its meaning. You know, you get these seniors that think you have nothing to offer them. But the 8th graders, they still listen. They still put up with you, and you know. But the parents are hard for a totally different reason. Like they feel like a lot of the parents are very attached to the way they were raised, what they've done with their lives, and then they feel there's a very interesting dynamic where if they change something, it kind of means to them that what they did before wasn't right. Because you know, a lot of people have a hard time coming to terms with this. Like, I've been doing the same thing for so long, and then someone says, well, do you think about it differently? And that can be very painful. Because if you think about it differently and you've been doing it one way for a long time, does that mean that you weren't always doing it the best way? Right? And did that already have so many consequences we can't take it back?
Yo,
Yes, sir.
your mom spoke on that.
What?
Your mom spoke on that to us too.
Oh yeah, did she? Yeah, right. But like, the best you can do is the best with what you got, right? Getting rid of things you have because you're trying to hang on to something you already lost isn't helping, you know?
Right. No, for sure.
Right. So like with the parents and things, like how do you get over these things? You know, I'm telling you, get these 8th grade kids, like the boys that get in fights all the time. Those are some of my favorites. I love the rowdy boys. You know.
I wonder why.
I love the girls that rally up the boys too, and the boys want to blame the girls, and you're like, no, unfortunately that woman is teaching you something you need to know your whole life. So like you better get used to it now.
Pay attention.
Yeah, right. But I tell the boys the same thing. I tell all my classes. Do me a favor. Try to touch your fingers together as gently as you possibly can. So they're touching and you can feel it. But they're not pushing together, just so gently.
Energy.
It actually takes all the focus you got. That one little thing. You know what you find? Silence. All you gotta do is try to touch your fingers together. Just
You're concentrating too hard.
Concentrating, yeah.
focus on it. And when I say silence, I mean you hear the sounds around you, but your brain shuts down. Right?
I mean, so I just thought of something when you said that whenever you watch movies about Shaolin and they're meditating, they always have their fingers touching together.
It's actually really hard to do with both hands at the same time. You will drive yourself nuts. Like lay in your bed and just try to get both fingers. You do one hand first and you'll be like, oh, I got that. And now try to do both and you'll feel them. One's pushing harder and letting up and pushing harder and letting up and trying to get them both in that balanced state where they're barely touching. Yes, sir.
My name is Rick. I'm an addict and alcoholic. I used to study with a Buddhist in Korea. When I was in Korea for 2 years, it took me almost a year to perfect the meditation. But it takes most Buddhists 10 years with the fingers and not touching it.
It's intense, isn't it?
Yeah, when I perfected just to meditate, period, it took me almost a year just to try to clear my head. I mean, really clear it, whereas there's nothing but silence. Like you just tune out everything around you.
Right. And my biggest challenge in life is that I think I've always been able to get calm if there's like when things are happening, especially when they're happening really fast, right? Then how do you find that sound? So that's one I've been doing forever. Like I'm not always good at it, but sometimes it does work, right? Like something happens, I just think, oh, so put those fingers, just focus on the tips of those fingers. Like it's all I got. It's all I got, you know? And I teach that to my high school kids. A lot of the young boys came back and said they found great power in that. They said they found out that if when they're feeling themselves get mad, they just think about touching their fingertips together gently, they stop making bad decisions. Because they just found a moment of silence. Right? Creativity happens during silence in your brain. Lots of research on this. People that move too fast and their brains move too fast, they don't find that. They don't make creative decisions. And again, lots of transitions in psychology on this. They teach people to find that little piece of silence, and you see people who thought they weren't creative becoming incredibly creative about finding solutions to their problems. So, I mean, so that's like an academic background. Like that's, I think there's power in just knowing things, right? And so that was a combination of a lot of authors. Some of their lessons so profound that like you can't convey it in a short amount of time. But like that.
What happened?
What's that?
Something happened.
I'm just thinking through my head.
You started. You were doing good, then you all of a sudden.
Well, I like the idea of developing thoughts in front of an audience. I do this a lot in my professional presentations too, which means that you're gonna be a little clumsy at times and then have to work your way forward. But yeah, what you saw was an anxiety spike because I could look at that book and I have a lot of notes in there. I don't want to.
Well, you better ask them because with your mother, if I don't look at the book, we're in Siberia.
We're all everywhere.
We're all over the world, yeah.
Well,
But
yes, sir.
with me, my name is Richard, I'm an addict. But when you did that, I was like waiting to see. It was like I almost went into a little kid trying to wait and say, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I try to find that silence.
Yeah, I'm just thinking what you're gonna say next. You know what I'm saying? He's thinking.
Oh, you want to do a fun one? Here's what I do with all my classes. All my kids tell me I'm crazy. They literally struggle with this one. I do breathing exercises in almost all my classes. I also do poetry in all my classes. Yeah.
Poetry.
What's up?
There's nothing wrong with poetry.
Well, there's not. But like, all right, what's the point, right? Like, it seems to me like, you know, someone one time told me, if you have two decisions in front of you, and the outcomes seem about the same, but one seems harder than the other, unless you're so swamped that you can't, and you don't got nothing left, you always choose the harder one. And the reason, so that you know you got that. So you know you're not being weak, because your brain will play tricks on you. Your brain will tell you the easy path is the same as the hard path. And just in case you're trying to trick yourself, just choose the hard one all the time, and we'll just get rid of that problem. Right? Does that kind of make sense? So like, I find poetry is this, right? Like, what, you could sit there and do nothing, or you could attempt to embarrass yourself.
I think the average person.
Right?
I think the average person gonna take the easy one.
Poetry has a lot of meanings, a lot of stuff you can think about and get your mind going.
Right. Yeah, so I get the kids, I really, 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 really like it when people get up in front of an audience and just embarrass the hell out of themselves, or the heck out of themselves, sorry. Right? Because there's true value in that. Because if you're comfortable doing that, what's someone going to say to you later that's going to get you over the edge, you know? It's like, if you're willing to humiliate yourself, is it hurt so bad if someone else tries to humiliate you?
Why should I?
You just, yeah, it all goes, right? Because you know you're strong enough, right? And I never get through to a lot of the kids, but, yes, sir.
Is that something similar to being able to laugh at yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I played this game, all right, we can let one rip for a second. This is fun. I play this game called 2 Words. It's actually one that I invented. And the audience comes up with 2 words. And the student, or often me in front of the class, because I have to do it a bunch of times to get the kids going, makes an improv poem out of the 2 words. So go for it. 2 words. Chicken and bucket. You're pushing me. In the D, no less. He's gonna throw me chicken and bucket. It's the only white guy in there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll run with that. Give me a second. So then the person who's performing gets a second to like think through, make a direction, right?
1,000.
Chicken and butter.
That's a hard one.
Got away, so I said bucket.
I'll run with that.
Oh.
Some things seem so simple in life. Like a bucket of chicken. Like everyone wants it, but I gotta go get it. And there's something inside of me that says there's something missing from there, and I've thought this since I was a young child, that I'd like to have my own chickens. I get some eggs, and eventually I get some chicken, right? Like, how could this possibly go wrong? Yet I find myself at 43 years old, and I've never owned a chicken, and I still buy it by the bucket. We just get, you know, you get the kids rolling. They really like that one. Yeah. Usually we just to make sure that we don't get kids too far out of their comfort zone, what we do is we put them in small groups. We have them say them to each other in small groups. And then we fish out the more confident kids and we put them in front of the class, you know. But here, do something else with me. Let's do a breathing exercise. Let's see if we can all bring our heart rates down. And in fact, Heart rate monitors, I really like heart rate monitors, like even the ones that clip on your finger, and practice lowering your heart rate. Usually you can get it down at least 5, probably 10 beats per minute from where you're sitting.
Techniques work a lot.
Absolutely. They work great.
It's perfect.
Yeah. And so the idea is I'll walk you through it. We're going to breathe in through our nose. And this is actually an exercise. It's not as relaxing as you might think. Because you're going to really use your lung muscles and fill your lungs all the way up in through the nose. And then when you're all the way full, it's actually hard to transition from breathing in your nose to out your mouth. But we want that transition to be as... But when your lungs are all the way full, you want to transition to breathing out through your mouth as gently as possible, all the way at the top of your breath. And then you're going to breathe out slow and smooth all the way to the bottom. When you get to the bottom, you want to really push that air out like it's an exercise. All the way out your mouth, and then gently back in your nose. So let's all do this together. Everyone, in through your nose, keep breathing in. Should force you to put your shoulders back as your lungs get very, very full. And then transition to gently out the mouth. And push it all the way out till you get to the very bottom. Then gently back in through your nose.
I'm getting dizzy.
It will happen, right? And actually a lot of people when they practice breathing exercises, they say to start in your bed. Because there's more aggressive breathing exercises that really work well.
Yeah.
And again, breathing all in. And this idea of really, really filling your lungs, really, really pushing them empty, and really focusing on the transition to try to make sure that that transition from breathing in through your nose to out through your mouth is gentle, and then when you get to the bottom, out through the mouth, in through the nose is gentle. Here's one for you, test taking. Like in schools, there's the great experiments with test taking. They take kids.
Teacher, I'm late for class.
Oh, you're good.
James is trouble, Jesse, just so you know.
They take kids and they say, can you make them do better on the test without teaching them anything? No knowledge. We're not going to do any book work. We're not going to do anything. You're going to bring kids into a room, and can I stand in front of a classroom and get kids to do better on the test than they would have otherwise? And the answer is absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. As a teacher, you can stand in the class and prepare those kids mentally for the test. And here's the 2 things they need to know. This is going to be hard and you can do it. If you tell kids they got it, you guys are prepared, you guys are ready for this, they won't do as well. If you tell them this test is going to be hard, you kill their confidence, no, they need to be prepared for a struggle. They need to get hyped up a little. They need to get a little edgy, right? This is going to be hard, and you can do it. That brings up test scores. Here's another one.
Excuse me.
When something frustrating happens, get rid of the frustration before you move on. Frustration kills creativity. Remember I said creativity happens when? In silence. What does frustration do? It makes those voices in your head go full speed, don't they? You're frustrated, you're like, zzz. Creativity's gone. So the kids need to know. If you find yourself frustrated, here's what I tell them to do. I say, put down your pencil, palms down on your desk. Focus on the cold. You feel that desk. Feel the desk. 2 breaths. Get back to work.
How many?
2.
2 breaths.
2 breaths. Get back to work. Takes 2 good breaths. It takes about 10 seconds per breath. 2 good breaths is 20 seconds. In a 45-minute test, we got that much time a number of times.
Is that in through the nose and out through the mouth?
In through the nose, out through the mouth.
Gotcha.
Right. And these are tested. This works in real life. I mean, what works for those kids on the test is going to work for any decision you have to make that has any importance in your life ever. This is going to be difficult, and you can do it. And don't make the decision while you're frustrated. You need to ditch the frustration before the decision-making process, right? And I find all these things tie together. You got to find the silence first. I think this is where, I've been in these conversations enough and with enough people. I think it's something that's often overlooked. Where we talk a lot about how to make good decisions, what a good decision is, what defines a good person. But if we don't find that moment of silence, then we don't even get a chance to make the right decision. And I think practicing that on the daily is important. How much time? I gotta stop.
15 minutes.
That's perfect.
What would leave headache tension?
Relieve headache tension?
Big ass ass.
Oh, well, I think a lot of, you only got two options. You're psychological or you're physical, right? And your brain affects your body.
It's like anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety.
Frustration or anxiety.
Jordan Peterson is a lecturer from the University of Toronto. And he says, the best you're ever going to get in life in general is to do the best with what you got right now. True. Like right now, what do you got? And then you got to do the best with what you got. Right? I certainly think I have high anxiety problems. They don't cause me headaches, but I get a lot of anxiety. And, again, just putting my fingers together helps me a ton. But also just that really, since reading that book a few months ago, I've really changed it to being more intentional. I'm just going to stop my brain. I'm just going to stop it. And even if I can only stop it for a really, really short amount of time, next time I'm just going to try to do it for a little longer. And breathing exercises, relaxation. I'm a big believer in human connection. I think that no human is meant to live alone. We are just not meant to be alone in this world, right? And so I don't like the idea that of we call a monk for a reason. That's something like a saint. There's these things up there, and you certainly don't want to start trying to compare yourself to that, right? That's a special class. So the idea of sitting alone and being alone and solving all your problems through, I don't think that's the solution, right? There needs to be a conversation with people we trust. We need to be building trust with people. We need to be experimenting with relationships, meaning I've decided to trust this person, it didn't work out, and then we need to be honest with ourselves, where in that process, right? But I think, if I had to guess, I'd say the best bet, without medications and things like that is, really focusing on the meditation stuff. Meaning all these things. When we say find silence, that's the gist of meditation. I also believe in exercise. And exercise is based on flexibility. Guys, we do not need to be trying to train ourselves to be superheroes. But a good 45 minutes a day of mild exercise that's focused on flexibility really is a powerful thing, because I have lower back pain. I can't make it through a day. I'll be okay if I don't exercise for 3 or 4 days, but I'll pay the price, right? And so for me, it has to be an everyday thing. It's 45 minutes every single day. And it's not, and again, it's not extreme, Focus on hamstring. If you just focus on hamstring flexibility, you'll grow more gracefully. Everyone will. Right? This has been well shown. Just the hamstring flexibility. I mean, literally, just straight back, bending forward, and just stay like that for 4 or 5 minutes until you're actually tired. But not with your back bent. Don't bend over like touching your toes. You want to keep your chest up. Right? Things like this. But I don't know.
My thing is overthinking things. We nagging you, you start sobbing, you can't get rid of it. That thing is frustration or something.
Right. And I think, the first thing to know is every single human has that. Right? And of course, some of us follow one way or the other, but that's true with everything. We all got some traits, and some of us are one side, some of us are the other side. And again, everyone's capable of finding balance. Right? Even if it's just for a little bit of time. Right? Like, there's a million, if you read these books, there's a million things like looking at a flower. Like really, every single flower has intricacy and pieces and lines and shapes that are not there when you first look. You have to really focus on it, right? Same thing with art, right? Why do people appreciate art like an aristocratic, like the wealthy people? Why do they go see art? Their brains are running all the time. They're just going to literally stand in front of a painting and zone out. Right? It's all going to go away. They're going to see if we can soak in that image at a deeper level than if we just looked at it. Like you really see it. Music, I think, helps a lot, right?
Yeah.
Music can clear thoughts, and I think especially music without words, right? If we listen to music without words, we really find a piece of sounds because your brain's not running with the lyrics. Yeah. So, I used to listen to a fair bit of classical music, but I kind of got rid of that. But I want to bring that back to another thing. Like, I think ultimately what gives people peace is feeling good about themselves. Right? And like, you ultimately, I think a lot of us end up with that internal struggle, like, am I a good person? Am I doing what I could have done? Did my life even fill out to the potential, right? We all have a certain amount of intelligence. We have our physical strength. We have our health. And then can you reflect on your life and say, did you make the best of every bit along the way? No, that's what saints do. That's why we call them saints, right? Like that's not for us. That's not for us. We don't get that. So you gotta let all that go. That's gone. It was what it was, and it is what it is, right? But we're still going to make decisions today, and we don't want to resent those decisions later. We can resent the ones we made in the past. That's gone, right? There's nothing we can do about it. But today we can not make decisions that we're going to resent later. And it turns out that's not even possible. Without a lot of practice and a lot of training. You're basically taking a piece of what it means to be a saint, something that's better, and saying, can I take a little bit of that and put it in my life? But you can't take the whole thing. You don't get it. None of us do, right? And so, then the quick question, I think the quick question comes like, how do we train to do that? And again, I go back to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson gives a lecture on what it means to be a good person. It's a 1-hour lecture. It's kind of hard to follow. It's called The Necessity of Virtue. It's a very famous YouTube video. You can load it up. The Necessity of Virtue. And what he's saying, a couple things, first of all. Virtue is not like, I held a door for you. Because I can hold a door for you. There's not even enough sacrifice there. There wasn't enough risk there. There was zero bravery. Right? That's not virtue. Right? Well, one of the questions we asked, what do you know about Anne Frank's parents? Everyone know who Anne Frank is? Right? The little girl in World War II, saved by the Christian family, the little Jewish girl that was saved by the Christian family. What do we know about her parents? Or not her parents, her saviors, the people that saved that little girl. What do we know about?
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, I disagree. They were good people.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right, see that?
Their character.
See, I don't need to know a word they spoke in their life. I don't need to know any of that to know they were good people. So like this idea of being wholesome and good, it doesn't require language. It doesn't require words. Right? It might in the time, but right when we reflect back on it. Yes, sir.
They were also very brave.
Yeah, and that's the point. True, we can ask that. What does it take to be a good person? Bravery, you're not, now everyone that's brave isn't good.
Courage.
Courage, courage,
Very
definitely.
good, yeah.
You're not. But again, we have to have more than that because there's a lot of brave people that are not well-intentioned.
Putting your life on the line.
Compassion.
Right? There's the compassion piece. There's a sacrifice piece, right?
Sacrifice.
Like the saviors of Anne Frank, if they would have been caught, their families would have been tortured and like horrific things that like so horrific, and yet they did that anyways, right? And then to realize that, I asked my high school classes this: would you have saved Anne Frank?
Oh, boy. Everybody would say yes.
They all say yes. But here's the problem: there was 1 million Anne Franks, and one of them was saved. So the answer is not yes. Right?
Right.
Look at the German soldiers that were sent to Poland. The German army had already spread. Everyone who volunteered had already gone. The people that wanted to be Nazis, they were all off fighting wars. And now Germany needed more people. And they went through the cities and they rounded up the men that didn't want to fight. And they sent them to Poland. You know what happened? Those men fell right in line. They started dragging people out of the houses, all things, the worst things, like things we don't want to talk about. Those men showed up and they did what they were told, and it was not good. So, would you have been the person that said no? Yes, sir.
What's that? There was an experiment they did in a college where they had some students act like they were prisoners.
That's right. That's right. I know this study well. So what he's speaking of is there's a couple versions of it, but this study got canceled. They set up a fake prison. They made some of the prisoners guards, or some of the students guards, and some of the students prisoners.
I've seen that.
And they acted this out. It was supposed to be a 3-week-long study. The kids just checked in for 2 hours. They went to their cells. It was a 2-hour reenactment. Within 3 weeks, they didn't put very many regulations on it. Within 3 weeks, the students who were classified as the guards had become so cruel to their other students that they had to cancel the study.
That's right.
They couldn't even finish the study because the kids had become so cruel.
That's right.
Wow.
And so Jordan Peterson makes a really good point. He says, are you a good person? Jesus, you can't answer that. That's not an answerable question. It's not a question that we can answer for ourselves. But we can fight hard to make sure that if those opportunities do appear in the future, we're ready for them. Because that's all you got, right? Something has to happen. There has to be an event. There has to be a place for you to be brave, a place to take sacrifice, a place for all the things. And then you have to be ready for them. And so I would say, that takes a few things. One, comfort with silence in your head. You're going to have to make a decision at difficult times. That's inevitable. 2, Jordan Peterson says this best. We're all dangerous people. Every single one of us is phenomenally dangerous. You put any one of us in the wrong situation and make the consequences high enough, we will become dangerous people. Right?
Yes.
And you have to be comfortable with that. Because if you don't know you're that dangerous, then how are you supposed to respect yourself? Like if I was walking around with a loaded gun, I wouldn't just be throwing it over here and throwing it over there. No, I'd have it on me, and I would be worried about it, and I would be paying attention, and I would make sure everything around me is taken care of. But we don't do that with ourselves, and each one of us is much more dangerous than a loaded gun.
So the students they put in charge of other students, when they made them, the guards over them, they felt that they was in charge.
Right. The power that
I was gonna say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
yeah, right. And there are exceptions, right? These human beings that pop up every once in a while that are such an incredible exception to the norm. The saviors of Anne Frank, you know, the Winston Churchills of the world, right? Like guys that just, you know, I mean, look at. There are many examples. What's that?
Donald Trump. He's a hero.
You get him tomorrow too, guys.
Thank you.
And I wanted to tell you, I got what I wanted for Christmas, so I'm.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Kathy, you might lose your job.
Yeah.
I know, I'm very grateful right now that he doesn't live anywhere near here. 'Cause I probably-
Do you do YouTube videos?
I do sometimes. You can, I don't know what's on the YouTube channel as far as brands.
Facebook Live.
I mean, so like here's another one. Like, I focus a lot on speaking. I have my entire adult life. I consider myself a professional speaker. Not necessarily in this environment. You know, I'm a chemist and I'm in a professional capacity. A chemist, but like, I find great value in videotaping myself.
Facebook Live.
Like, I literally, if you go into my phone, like, you'll see lots of videos of me I just videotape myself when I have a thought, and I find it incredibly helpful.
All right, pass your phone around.
Well, we had a screen. I'm one of those people, I don't hide much. So like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I was trying to, there's a whole bunch.
Are you critiquing yourself when you do this, when you go back and look at it later on?
Oh yeah, what's that? Are you critiquing myself?
Yeah. And,
Most of the time he does it in his car when he's driving.
I do this. Oh, you riding down. You're one of those guys. You go to commercial.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's like, I mean, there's probably, I've only had this new phone for a month and a half, and there's probably already 20 videos of me just talking to myself.
That's why you do it at any moment.
Almost all of it. I got that this phone right as I was talking with Mom about coming here, so almost all of them are in preparation for arriving here.
Okay.
We didn't have a truck come in. Did you notice that, guys?
Yeah.
That was an answered prayer too. I was hoping we would go through those. I know he's got to be back in Ann Arbor. Thank you so much, Jimmy. Very much.
Go green.
Yeah, I'm not too. I got a minute. We can hang
Oh,
out.
okay,
Yeah.
go for it. I'm
Well, no,
fine
I mean,
with
just
you
like
back.
if anyone had anything they wanted to say or comments or go for it.
Okay, so like, what I was getting a lot of is with meditation, and while you were speaking, I kept trying to do the fingertip thing, and I was finding like, like you said, it's like, it stops you from thinking because you concentrate so much on trying to do that. So is that pretty, a good technique? Just
Yeah, it's people, there are so many out there, right? People say like, all right, like listening to someone else's voice is different than listening to your own voice, but our brains don't move fast enough. So sometimes people say, try to hear the whispers in their lips between the sounds. Look for the pause while other people speak. Like find a silence between their words, right? And so there's a lot of different techniques. Like a lot of them are based around like almost isolating yourself. Like what's your next thought? And now I'm going to fall out from the world. But a lot of them are based in saturation. There was a Thach Nhat Hanh was a Vietnamese monk during the Vietnam War. He actually, before the Vietnam War, went and got a PhD from Stanford, so he was a very unique guy. And back during the Vietnam War, he intentionally went back to the war in Vietnam, and he brought water to people and things like this, which was, again, think of the level of sacrifice. Here was a man living in America, an incredibly privileged life that was from Vietnam, and during the Vietnam War, went back by his own will, just to see if he could be helpful. And after he left that, he wrote a book called Walking Meditation. And he actually changed what most people saw as meditation. And what Thich Nhat Hanh said is, he said, you can't justify sitting and meditating in silence when the world is falling apart around you. You have to get up. You have to go do something with your physical body to be helpful. And he said, just because you're using your physical body doesn't mean you have to lose your mental capacity. So he said you can meditate and work at the same time. And so I really like this, and this is where the things like focusing on someone else's voice, right? Where no longer am I sitting inside of myself, but instead I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to try to listen more intently. I'm going to try to really decipher the sounds, right? People's facial expression, same thing. Like a lot of this spawned out of Thich Nhat Hanh's work.
You know the word walking and chewing both of them.
I was going to say that's Ricky.
But, all right, I'll give you one more story that I really like, but it goes to walking with you and bubble gum.
I have to go back to the breathing technique you were trying to tell us about. How is it that, for me, that when I exhaled completely, and you say inhale through my nose real gently, I find it very difficult to do.
I grew up in martial arts.
Oh, okay.
This is like one of those things. That is exactly right. That is not an easy. That is something we practice. You can honestly almost never get good enough at it. Like that transition at the bottom. I find the transition at the bottom harder than the transition at the top. But yes, but that's the point. Like, we're not just breathing. We're making breathing so difficult that it takes all of our mental focus to breathe.
So we're focusing on the breathing as opposed to everything else.
That's right. That's how you're finding the silence. I mean, that's the point of breathing exercise. It's not just breathing, and it's breathing in a way that's so controlled that it takes all of your mental capacity just to breathe. And then you find silence. Here, you guys got time for a little story? This is one of my favorites. This is one of my favorites for the 8th graders.
Julian, let's go.
This is a Japanese proverb. And what the story is it's a Japanese boy who goes to the emperor. And he says, I would like to work for you. And the emperor laughs and says, we do not hire boys, we only hire men. And the boy says, you don't understand, I am exceptional. I'm top of everything, my martial arts, everything. I'm an exceptional person. I'm not the boy that you're used to seeing. And the emperor says, no problem. Here's a spoon full of water. And he hands the boy a spoon full of water, and the boy holds it gently. And he says, now, walk the castle, walk the palace, all the stairwells, towers, and come back. And don't spill that water. And the boy does, and he comes back, and he's so proud of himself, and he shows the emperor. He says, I didn't spill a drop. And the emperor says, well, how did you enjoy the artwork? He said, I've traveled the world. I've collected the most phenomenal art from everywhere I've been. What did you think of it?
You never know.
You never know.
And the boy says, well, I was trying not to spill water. And the emperor says, well, go back through the castle. And the boy comes back to the emperor after going through the castle, and he is ecstatic. He said, that changed my life. I saw things that were so important, so valuable, the emotion. I've been through it. I feel like a life-changing experience. And the emperor says, well, where's the water? Right? And so to be a man, you have to be able to enjoy without spilling the water. Right? And the symbolism of the water is everything that's precious to you.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in the car and you're about to rail that turn, it feels so good, and you're like, you're about to spill the water, buddy. Like, you can just edge off a little. This goes along with the kids. I always relate everything back to cars because, at that age group, anything that's going to happen bad to those kids is going to happen with a car. Whether it's drugs, girls, you name it. It's going to all happen with a car. They're going to hurt somebody else. They're going to get hurt. They're going to end up in trouble. alcohol exposure, oh, it's all gonna happen in cars. And so.
You got me.
That what they say.
I gotta go back to the 8th grade.
Yeah. Yeah, go back to the 8th grade. That was my favorite age to teach. I really loved the 8th grade. That's the fun one. Any other comments, questions?
Question,
Yes, sir.
you're a chemist.
I am.
What kind of chemistry?
I'm a physical chemist. So that's like the math side of chemistry. It's relating physics, the application of physics to molecules.
What do you think about this pandemic medicine they're giving people? What's your opinion of it? I ain't gonna hold it against you.
Well, I mean, I have opinions that I think some people think are controversial, but I don't think they are. Right? Like, I mean, I'm not really worried. I mean, people have to make individual decisions about what they feel is best for their health and their lives, and I don't know about that, but I think, like, as a society, we're like phenomenally fortunate people. I mean, the life expectancy in America is higher than it's ever been. People are, even with this virus, people are living longer than they've ever lived in world history right now. Right? And so, like, are there gonna be bumps in the road? Yes. Right? Yes. I mean, and then, like, what do we ultimately want, right? Like I had this conversation with one of my mentors a while ago, Dave Beauchamp. He's soft-spoken older man, and he just says things that are so profound. He said, do you want to be right, or do you want to be effective? Because what's happening in this conversation is a lot of people are trying to be right. Like, I have an answer, and there's a lot of danger in that, thinking you have answers for other people's problems. Right? And so this, I feel that the conversation around this virus has divided people too much. Too much. You got people who feel too strongly one way, strongly another way, and the consequences are real. And now I think the conversation has become somewhat toxic. Right? Because what I don't hear is anyone saying, when you have everything to give, you feel strong, and you're brave, here's what you do. Right? And I think that any real problem we got is going to take brave, strong, hard-working people to solve. And I'm not saying this isn't a problem in that regard, but, like, we spent $2 trillion just to hand out money to people. It's like, that makes no sense to me. We're going to spend $2 trillion. It needs to be to get people in a better place. Like, look at our diet. Look at the American diet. Right? We got more people dying of hypertension and heart disease than anything else in this country. For $2 trillion, we could have shut down every fast food restaurant and turned it into something that's worth eating. That's $2 trillion is that much money. We could have done that. Instead, we shut down everything else and kept the fast food open, shifted the American diet. There's no doubt during this pandemic that the American diet has gone downhill dramatically.
Fat on the couch.
And I've been living in rural New Hampshire, and, like, I'm going out in the country, and I'm seeing levels of poverty I've never seen before in America.
In New Hampshire?
No, it's in North Carolina.
No.
Sorry, did I say New Hampshire? I live in North Carolina. Yeah, I'm seeing levels of poverty in the country there. Like, I go to the flea markets and stuff, and I really like the flea markets. And it's become an issue. You know, every time I go, I give my kids, like, way too much money now, because they just got to go around and spend it, because, like, I don't know what else to do. Like, you got to do something. Like, these people are really, really, really hurting. And, like, what are we risking? What's the reward? I think somehow, I don't know what the answer is, but I just don't feel that what we're doing is the most intelligent thing to do. Yes, sir.
What town do you live in, North Carolina?
I was living in Silva. I actually just moved out of there last week, but yes, Silva, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Little mountain town. I love that little town.
I just came from North Carolina. New part of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you like the cold?
It really wasn't that cold.
In North Carolina, it never gets that cold. But up here it does. So,
But you can't light up the world by sitting back and glowing. You gotta go out and light somebody else's candle. And that's in effect what he's saying. You gotta do what you can do, you know? So,
I'm just telling you, like, I like what you guys are doing here with the food systems, right? But like, you know, it's like there was an old folks home in Pennsylvania, and they had decided that they weren't going to let anyone in the old folks home because of the coronavirus, right? So they had everyone totally separate. Even the workers were separate. And eventually what happened is they had a vote. They said, who wants to keep all the grandkids, all the kids, everyone out? And who wants to open the doors and just let everyone in? And risk dying. Every single person, more than 200, every single one voted to let everyone in. Yep. Right? And so, like, what are we doing? Right? Like, what's the value of life? Where's the sacrifice? You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, I've been one of those people my whole life. I have consistently risked my life over things that were not very important. Like driving fast, like entertainment, fighting, you know, messing around in the D, right? you know, right? Just to dance, I've risked my life a lot of times, you know. Because I go out in Detroit, I just love to dance. I got some issues, you know. But like, then, all right. So I have to be honest about how much value I've placed on my own life, and then I have to look at other people's lives, and I say, well, I know from the history of my own actions, I place at least as much value of the lives of others as I do on myself. And then certain people place so much value on life that other things get lost, right? I mean, this is a veteran community. You guys, obviously I shouldn't, I mean, I feel uncomfortable even saying that, right? You guys know better than me, right? Like there's something that's more valuable than life. And like, I feel like in this conversation, I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong, but that needs to be a part of the conversation. What is more valuable than life itself? And if we're going to change our whole society and switch the whole thing around, then I'm okay with that line being moved, but I'm not okay with it being moved without talking about it.
You said something about take the children away, they put the old folks over, and you're going to take them people's kids away from them?
That's what they did. Yeah, in Pennsylvania, they lived like that for, I forget what the article said, I think 5 months. They had all the old people in quarantine, right, so they wouldn't get the coronavirus. Yeah, right. And eventually they just opened it back up, let all the grandkids flood in, all the stuff. I'm sure they got coronavirus running rampant there now, and I'm sure a bunch of people died.
They
So what are we doing, right? What are we doing?
you know, even within our own family, we've got such a diversity of thinking on that. Jason's sister is totally isolated. She has no one coming in and out of her house, you know. Matter of fact, she got with him yesterday only because it was outside on a hike.
Yeah, we went for a hike together.
And we haven't seen Jay in 4 years, you know. But not that that's wrong, it's just that that's the way she goes through. That's what's her anxiety level is.
Yeah, I got a daughter, she would just come, put it on the bottom step of the porch and run away.
Hey, but like, so we got to be really careful about what behaviors are so individual and therefore, right? My problem is like, I run relatively large construction sites. Mm-hmm. The people that work for me are not truly poor, but far, below middle class.
Okay.
Right? They do not collect any benefits. These are people that make enough money to not be on any social services whatsoever. And then those are the people that are going to get hurt the most if they don't go to work. These are not people that are going to make it a month without working. There's not money in the system for that. And so I have 120 plus people on the job site a day. And then, the wealthier you are, the more you want everything shut down because it doesn't affect you. Right, and so like I'm hanging out with people that are saying, well, should we shut down the job site? And me going, no, are you guys lost your minds? We got like 100 plus people here who are not going to have what's next. Like, this is their job. This is what's planned for them at this time. So, are we going to shut everything down, right? Look at the world food crisis related to the coronavirus, because America has stopped exporting so much food. We have enough food for ourselves, but America makes way more food than we eat. We export food all over the world.
Yeah.
Those exports have fallen dramatically. Those exports go to places like North Africa, South India, where, you know, right now, worldwide, they say there's about 50 million more people starving to death than there would have been without the coronavirus. 50 million. And we're talking about saving, so let's say we do it. Let's say we save 1 million American lives. And the world loses 50 million to starvation. And then it's like it gets more difficult. What's the value of one life versus another life? Because we're Americans,